"4,000 years ago, the Creator of the universe made an everlasting covenant with Abraham. All the land, from the Euphrates to the Nile, belongs to the sons of Israel. Shockwaves will shake the earth as heaven reaches down to fulfill that promise. Every nation that attempts to interfere with that covenant will march onto the battlefield against the Almighty. Prepare for a rude awakening."
This is Michael Rood in the hill country of Judea, welcoming you to this teaching on the Creator's calendar and the restoration of all things. The hill country of Judea is just one small part of the parcel of land that was promised to Abraham, his sons Isaac and Jacob, a parcel of land that goes all the way from the river Euphrates in modern-day Iraq to the great river in Egypt. Just before coming into this parcel of land, Moses gave us final instructions just before his death. And in those instructions, he told us that when we come into this land, we are not to be contaminated by the worship of the pagans that inhabited this area. It was the sons of Canaan, the grandson of Noah, that came in and settled this land. And when they came out of Babylon at the time of the confusion of languages, it was at that time that they brought their Babylonian sun god worship with them into this land. Also, the sexual perversion that Noah cursed Canaan for to begin with was also a part of their lifestyle. And so Moses, giving his final instructions, said that when you come into this land, you are not to learn the way of the heathen. You are not to learn how they worship and serve their gods and do the same thing and say you're doing it for me. He said, do not even let the name of their pagan gods come out of your mouth. You are to go into this land and expunge it of every last vestige of pagan sun god worshipers that the Canaanites brought into this parcel of land. Now, he also said that after he died, he knew by revelation that we were going to break the covenant that was made with us at Mount Sinai. We were not going to keep the commandments. We were going to add commandments to the instructions that we received from the Almighty. We were going to take away commandments. We were going to get contaminated by the world. He knew it. He spoke of these things. And he said that he was going to give us a song. We refer to it as the Song of Moses. And this song was to be repeated throughout our generations, and it was something that was going to remind us of something very important. That when we come into this land and we do get contaminated by the worship of these pagans and their pagan sun god worship, contaminated by their reckoning of time, which is based on the worship of other gods, he said that the Almighty was going to throw us out of this land, that we would be cast abroad throughout all the nations of the world. And when we are in our exile, we are going to see that the Almighty, it's as if he turns his back on us. And we don't even see him. But we do see that he fulfills his word. Now, when we are in our exile, and we are contaminated among the nations, we are no longer fulfilling our job as his priest, his representatives to the entire world. He said that at that time, this land would become a desolate wasteland. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. Just a little ways away, there are now olive yards. There are vineyards. There are plantings that are going on. And behind me, these trees behind me, they have been planted by the millions. It is growing up green all over the land of Israel again because the Almighty said he would bring his people back into this land in the last days. And he would restore all things. There is a prophesied restoration of all things, and it doesn't come very easily. It comes from working among the thorns. It comes from slaving out under the hot sun to plant millions of trees. and it's one step at a time as the restoration takes place. Now, the prophet Isaiah prophesied that in the last days that Israel, which would be spread among the nations abroad, would finally come back into their land and become a nation again in one day. Now, many theologians, in fact, most Western theologians 100 years ago said that this will never happen again. Israel will never become a nation again because God has forsaken Israel. All of the covenants that God made with Israel are null and void. He has cast them aside. He's divorced them. He has nothing to do with Israel. Now he only deals with Gentiles who call themselves Christians. Yet there was a very large group of people that said, if God can break his everlasting covenants with Israel, then no one is on safe ground. They said that Israel will in fact become a nation again in one day. Now we look back just a half century and see that on May 15th, 1948, Israel did indeed become a nation in one day. That did not come without a lot of pain and without a lot of bloodshed. A lot of work has gone into restoring the things that we left behind over 2,000 years ago. And part of that restoration is the Creator's calendar, a calendar that the world basically knows nothing about, but yet it is in every page of the Hebrew Scriptures. We are living in God's universe. The world in which we live is synchronized to God's calendar in God's time clock. Whether we know about it, recognize it, live by it or not, does not make any difference to the Almighty. I learned long ago that He does not spin the universe around what I don't understand. If I get in the way, it seems like things just continue to roll on over me. But we in the Western world have grown up in complete ignorance of the Creator's calendar, of His time clock, which is clearly detailed in the pages of the Scriptures. And we have inherited a pagan reckoning of time in which every day of the week is named after a different pagan god. Every month of the year is named after a different fallen angel. Days, weeks, months, and years all begin and end on completely fictitious points in time. It's as if the hands have been stripped from the face of the clock. We have no idea what time it is, but the Almighty knows what time it is. And He has a plan and a destiny for this planet and a destiny for mankind. He has made promises that He Himself will fulfill, whether we're awake, whether we're asleep, whether we realize it or not. He is the one that rules the universe, and He will bring to pass His promises. And in the last days, He is going to fulfill His promise to Abraham, that all of the land, from the great river Euphrates in Iraq, all the way to the river in Egypt, will belong to the sons of Israel. And these are the days that we are now living in, because there will be a restoration of all things.
Judith Rood and Michael Rood Ministries presents the Lydia Project World Outreach. The hope of Messianic followers in Israel, discriminated for their belief in Messiah Yeshua. Messianic Jewish and Sudanese widows and orphans receive no help from the Orthodox and government charities. It's up to you. Without your help, these women and children will face adversity for the rest of their lives. Donate now or purchase an authentic shofar, and all proceeds will go to furthering the work of Messiah on earth. Your donations will make a difference. If you don't help them, who will? The Lydia Project World Outreach. Call or go online now and start making the difference today.